So today I am joined by Nick Peet, BT Sport writer, BT Sport analyst, and just general fight disciple. Nick, how are things today, my friend?
Good, mate. Yeah, as you can see in God's country, in the Principality, it's nice and shiny today, blue skies. So I'm going to enjoy myself in the garden today, I think.
For any American viewers watching this, we must clarify this isn't what Liverpool is normally like.
It is.
What I would like to do first and foremost, and I understand that you've done a little bit of this on the live stream with John a couple of weeks ago. Could you give me a little bit of a brief overview into your career in media?
Yeah, sure, yeah. As someone that gets labelled a casual all the time, it'll probably surprise some people who may have not heard the story before that I've been a fight sports journalist since 1999, 22 years now. Started off, left school, didn't know what I wanted to do, thought I was going to be a sportsman, like most young lads. That dream died when I was about 15, 16. I left school, as I say, stumbled into a journalism class, and quickly put two and two together and realised that I could be paid to watch sport and report on it. And English was always a strength of mine in school as well. And then next thing you know, I was working for a local newspaper. Actually, funnily enough, my first ever job was for the Heighton and Roby version of the Mersey Mart, which is a weekly free newspaper in Liverpool. Did that for a couple of years, 18 months while I finished my qualifications, my formal journalism qualifications. Got a job at the Liverpool Daily Post, which used to be a morning paper in Liverpool, covering a lot of football, boxing, of course. And then I moved on to the Liverpool Echo, which is the regional paper, one of the biggest regional papers in the country, or at least it was at one stage. Again, covering football, Liverpool, Everton, home and away, boxing, of course. When MMA came through, certainly with Terry Etam, started covering a lot of MMA. He signed for the UFC. And I stayed there for a decade, stayed there for 10 years, and then I eventually left Liverpool, moved to London, worked at Boxing News for a spell. Loved the job. It was a dream come true job, being a massive boxing fan, working for the best boxing magazine on the planet. But like a lot of northern lads, couldn't take to London at all, just couldn't settle down there. So then I got an interview for Fighters Only, which is like the biggest MMA magazine in the world. Went over there, thought it was a job as a reporter, funnily enough. And when I got there, quickly put two and two together that they were looking for a new editor to move them forward. And by the time I left the interview, they'd offered me the job. So I spent 6 years as editor of Fighters Only, 13 magazines a year. We also had a fitness magazine called Train, which is still going now, which both did really well. And part of my job there was to organise the World MMA Awards every year in Las Vegas as well, do the short lists and the online public vote and everything else. So yeah, I'm a casual with 22 years experience. After 6 years there, anyway, I wanted to move into podcasting, do a lot more broadcasting, digital media. So I went out on my own. Me and Adam Catchell started Fight Disciples in 2016. 2017, we won our first national award. 2018, retained that national award. And we haven't looked back since. And I think that avenue, that podcast really has kind of showed us off for what we can offer in terms of broadcasting. Adam's ex-Radio 1 DJ, talk sports presenter. And the two of us have just clicked, you know. It's like Ant and Dec, I guess. When you've got a good little partnership, you want to keep it pushing. And I think BT Sport's seen that. They got us on board to do UFC. And that kind of brings us up to speed with where we are now. So PG version of me is BT Sport, and over 18 version of me and Adam is definitely Fight Disciples.
I was just about to say, how many episodes have you done of Fight Disciples now? Are we coming up to near 500?
We've done well over 500, to be honest with you. I think we're like the UFC. We only have the episodes, the only numbered episodes we do are the standard boxing and the standard MMA show that we do each week. But on top of that, certainly in the early days, you know, we did loads of interview episodes, and we did like, you know, special episodes, like greatest episodes, top 5 episodes, our favorite knockouts. So I think we're more like over 700 episodes in now, believe it or not. But you know what? It's the best gig in the world, because even people are quite surprised to hear that I only met Adam 6 years ago. We met, and within 2 or 3 months, we decided to start a podcast. But literally, it's, you know, he's like the Mancunian or the Blackburn version of me, if you like. We're both in very similar positions in our professional life, very similar positions at home, similar family values and everything else. And, you know, he's like my best mate now, isn't he? So it's so yeah, Fight Disciples is going bigger and stronger, and that'll never stop. Fight Disciples will never stop, because more than anything, it's our little avenue to be us as well.
Is it a escape as much as anything from probably some of the responsibilities at BT Sport?
Yeah, I think so. Listen, BT are brilliant, and this is why I love covering fight sports. You know, fight sports in general. Every broadcaster I've ever worked for, and I pretty much work for everybody at this stage. You know, it's not like you get briefed beforehand saying you've got to say this, you've got to toe the company line. Of course, we're there to celebrate the UFC, and we're there to celebrate the fact that it's on BT Sport. But, you know, I've never, ever had a conversation with a producer or anybody at BT Sport that says, you know, make sure you say this, or, you know, don't go too hard on that. You know, they like the fact that we call it how it is. And I think that's the way you've got to be in broadcasting, whether you're doing your own podcast or working for, you know, BT or Sky or BBC. You've just got to call it how you see it. And if people don't agree with that, if it doesn't in some way toe the company line, you know, maybe they should employ somebody else that will. I'd like to think that the reason we get employed is people want that honesty. They want fans to be able to relate to the fact that, yeah, man, we're calling a fight and going, yeah, he's going to get knocked out easy. It's a bit of a mismatch, this. That might not be what BT or UFC or, you know, Matchroom or Frank Warren want pushing towards fans to turn fans off, but it's honest, you know. I think that's one of our strengths.
There's a lot of people, I think, in like fight analysis opinions who just kind of say the same thing. You know, not so much toe the company line, but just toe the general narrative. And that's one thing I think that comes through in your show, and especially Fight Disciples with you and Adam, is you will give your opinion as opposed to the expected opinion, if you like.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and people have said to us in the past, does that hamper you when you go out and see fighters or speak to managers or certain promoters? And listen, I'd be lying if I said that we haven't had the odd phone call or email exchange with Frank Warren or Eddie Hearn or whoever it may be, who are a little bit disgruntled that we've poured cold water over one of their fights. But at the end of the day, we've just got to be true to ourselves, you know, and that was the rhetoric with Fight Disciples from the beginning. The reason we were doing it was that Adam was on TalkSport, and I was working for Fighters Only, but also doing stuff with BT Sport. And we just both wanted an avenue just to be the lads, just to be like in a pub with a beer. You know, we get accused all the time with Fight Disciples of, you know, it's you're just too casual. Like, the way casual doesn't bother me at all. It's anything but an insult. You know, I'm like, cool, man. You know what? If every casual in the world watched fight sports would become the most popular sports in the world. You know, by casuals, I guess you mean you're a football fan coming over to watch fight sports, dipping into the big fights. Great. That's what makes the big fights so big. Because if it was just those hardcore boxing and MMA fans that tuned into every single event, guess what? It probably wouldn't even make it onto TV. It's the fact that we get the super fights and we get the interest of the football fan. And from day one, you know, me and Adam sat down and we said, let's not do a podcast for boxing and MMA fans, because we're putting ourselves into a bottle there. It's a bottleneck. Let's open it up. Let's do a boxing and MMA show for football fans and go after everyone and just talk like we're in the pub. You know, keep all the stats out, try and cut back on all the nostalgic stories and all that stuff, and just have a laugh with it. And that's what we do. And we promised on day one as well, one take. We'll never ever go back and redo a take. And we've done that for 6 years now. Listen, it's carried us well this far. And people who listen to the show know that. Like on this week's show, at one stage, my daughter came in the room and started chatting to me. And then next thing you know, Adam's kids are suplexing each other through the living room floor and almost coming through the ceiling. And it's not like we went back and edited that out. Just leave it in. That's real life. It's half term. Get over it.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it's and what I was going to say then when you mentioned the term casual, is it just me, or have you ever noticed that people who use the term casual are often casual fans? Have you ever noticed that, Nick? Every single time. It's never someone like you or me who actually, to a certain extent, you more than me, but who knows what they're talking about. It's always someone who it's a bit to me like calling someone a racist or a sexist. It's just one of them terms that's thrown out and you can't really counter it.
Without casual fans, there would be no pay-per-view fights.
Yes.
You know, and that means we wouldn't have Conor McGregor, we wouldn't have Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, we wouldn't even get Dillian White versus Povetkin. You know, we wouldn't get any of these super fights without the casual fan. So even the hardcore fans that use that term, I'm like, come on, man. If you understand fight sports, you know, me and you are here. Me and you are going to watch UFC or a Matchroom boxing show, or we're going to stay up till 4 a.m. to watch Estrada versus Chocolatito because we're in. We're dyed in the wool fight fans. We're going to stay up. We're going to do what it takes. But to get everybody else interested, and that's what we want.
Yeah.
You know, my goal in life is to get everybody in the world loving fight sports as much as I do. Because guess what? That means I'll do more TV, more radio, more newspaper interviews, more columns online, and that means that my life is far more comfortable. I can pay my mortgage doing my passion. So of course, I'm the biggest fight fan on the planet. Get all the casuals in. I love casuals. They're the best type of fan.
Yeah, of course they are, yeah. And something that you mentioned there I wanted to pick up on about doing something, working as your passion. Now, when I mentioned to some people that you were going to join me today, a lot of people in similar spheres to myself, you know, doing this as a hobby or independent guys, wanted to ask you if you could have one piece of advice from turning this from a hobby into a profession, what would that be?
First and foremost, just to tick the box, just to have the certificate, get some sort of formal qualification. Yeah. Doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't have to be a degree in broadcasting. It doesn't have to be anything like that. It can be a simple 1 year, you know, Open University, HND, or, you know, any kind of advanced formal journalism, whether it's written journalism, whether it's broadcasting, anything, just so you've got a piece of paper, because that then lifts your head above the parapet of everybody doing it as a hobby. And then secondly, never miss, grind. And that's why I agreed to do this show with you, Michael, because you're a grinder. I follow you on social media. You're constantly doing interviews. You're constantly putting the work in. And I know I've been there. You know, at the end of the day, at the moment, this is costing you money. Yeah. But you're chasing what you want. What you want will come. The harder you work, the more hours you put in. Because right now you're building relationships, you're building contacts. And even though you may do an interview with a guy who's fighting on the undercard on Bellator, which is tough to watch in the UK, your primary audience right now is UK, you might get less than 100 viewers for that. But one of those viewers might be the producer over at BBC on the red button that is looking for someone to do backstage interviews. Yeah. That goes, this guy knows what he's on about, actually. This guy would be perfect. I can slip this young guy. You just never know. So you've got to keep grinding. You've got to keep repetitive. And listen, I just said then, I went away and got my formal qualifications straight from school. And it led to a newspaper industry job, which led to a magazine job, which led to another magazine job, which led to the podcasting and the broadcasting. So, you know, I followed a line there that you go, oh, that's how we got in then. But for 2 years, when I was first qualified as a journalist, I stacked shelves in Tesco's every night after work. Yeah. Monday to Friday, I work 9 to 5. I stacked shelves in Tesco's on Mather Avenue from 5:30 till 9 o'clock at night. And then when I was working at the Liverpool Echo, because I wasn't getting the column inches I wanted to write about boxing, to write about MMA, I started my own magazine with another Scouser called Chris Walker, who now writes for a bunch of people, including Matchroom and Boxing Scene. And, you know, Chris has written for everybody, Sky Sports. Me and Chris got together, we're good mates. And we started our own magazine called Mersey Gloves. And we used to write every word of it. We design it, we print it, we get it, we pick it up in the car, we drop it off at every gym in Liverpool. What we did is we picked up the printing costs, but we would take it to the gyms and they would sell it for £1. And every amateur boxing gym or amateur MMA gym, they kept 50 pence and we took 50 pence. And honestly, you know, I was working full time. Chris was working full time. I had a job. I was a sports journalist already. Yeah. But that was my passion. I wanted to do that. I wanted to write more. And funnily enough, when I went to see Fighters Only for Boxing News, I pulled a copy of Mersey Gloves out. And I was like, yeah, I work at Boxing News. I've done this, I've done that. I want to do this as a hobby. And they were like, what? And I was like, yeah, I just do that as well. Yeah, but you're a full-time journalist. You're doing it. you're working for boxing news? And I went, yeah, but this is what I love. This was Mersey Gloves. It was all about Liverpool, Merseyside's boxing and MMA scene, amateur and professional. And it blew them away. And they were like, Jesus Christ. And I think that, honestly, that was the final straw that he went, got to get this guy in as editor. Look at the passion he's got. And I think anything in life, once you find something you're truly passionate about, and you truly want to do, if you want to make it work, you can make it work.
Yeah.
Christ, look at Francis Ngannou.
Yeah.
Francis Ngannou last week became UFC heavyweight champion. A decade ago, he was shoveling sand in a sand mine in Senegal. And then a decade later, he jumps on a boat over from Morocco to Spain countless times. He eventually gets put in a Spanish jail. Then he's homeless, living on the streets of Paris. Absolutely insane. If that guy can't inspire you to follow your dream to become a fight sports journalist, if you think you can't do it and he's done that, come on, have a word with yourself.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? Yeah, I think as well, like, I get a lot of people, I get some people that are no professional. I get people contact me going, do you have any tips on my thing as well? Or people will say, I'm going to start my own channel or my own podcast, and I'll go, okay, then we'll do it. But people always seem to have this thing where they like to put things off, and I think you've got to a certain extent, or somebody in my position, you've got to make yourself undeniable. You've got to put the work in, because nobody is going to give you the job that you want in the profession that you want without any experience.
Yeah, exactly. And podcasting, everyone's starting podcasts at the moment. Literally, they're springing up every 5 minutes. And I support anybody and say anyone should crack on. It certainly helped me unlock the latest chapter of my career. But there's no money in podcasting.
Yeah.
Like we've been doing it for 6 years and won countless awards, and it's taken us all over the world. But it's only now it's actually turning a profit. In fact, prior to, we've got a good deal with Manscaped now, which is great, which we're loving. We said no to a lot of deals early on. We said no to a lot of stuff when we first won the award, because it was never a vehicle to make money for me and Adam. It was a vehicle to show off what a good partnership we were. Well, that's what it became. At first, it was a bit of fun, and then we thought, actually, we get on really well. This is something really good that a real broadcaster could get behind, and that's what it's led to. But then we diversified on our podcast as well. We started doing merchandise because we had such a loyal fan base. We had 2 options, really. One was to do a Patreon version of the podcast and do 10 episodes a week and ask people to pay £3 or £5 a month. And you know what? With our viewing figures, we could have probably done that and been very comfortably paid off our mortgages. But we didn't want to charge anybody. We didn't want to charge any of the fight disciples. We know how hard it is in this world, and people say, it's only £3, it costs a pint, but it costs a pint in Liverpool anyway. But we were like, no, man, we don't want to charge anyone anything. We don't want to stop people listening to what we've got to say. We're not doing a Patreon. We'll do a bit of merchandise, see if people like it. We did socks, t-shirts, and hoodies. We went mental. Then people were saying you need to do gloves and pads and all this, and I was like, I feel like a hypocrite selling gloves with fight disciples on. We're not a technical gear. Who am I to say someone, don't buy that pair of RDX or Everlast gloves. Come and buy these fight disciples gloves, because they're just going to be a pair of gloves with our logo stitched on. I don't want to stitch anyone up like that. And it was then when we were chatting, we were saying, what do our fight disciples followers do? Our demographic is 18 to 35-year-old men who love to have a bet, who love fight sports, who will travel to watch fight sports. And when they do that, they love to have a beer. And that was it then. We were like, cha-ching, let's find a brewery, let's do our own version of beer. And now we're on to our 3rd different type of beer. It's gone absolutely mental. And even the brewery, they can't believe it. In fact, they're diversifying now their business model to work with football clubs, because they're like, it's been bonkers how well the sales have gone with Fight Disciples beer. But again, it's good beer. It's not like we're getting it. We're not just getting like cheap cans of Skull and putting a different label on. We went out, we met the brewer. We decided to do a fully organic beer. If we're going to charge a premium, which you've got to with the numbers we're making, if you're not brewing 10,000 gallons of Budweiser, then you can't sell it for £1 a bottle like they do in the supermarkets. So we were like, we'll get proper beer done. We went out, we tasted it, or at least I did. We got a proper beer done, and as I say, we're on to our 3rd. Our Fight Disciples Pilsner will be available this summer, that's for
sure. Very much looking forward to that. What I would like to do as well is, And this is obviously a bit of a cliche question, so I'm gonna nuance it a little bit. When you were coming up in this game as maybe someone, you know, as a junior or whatever in some of these positions, what was the first big moment that you were truly proud of in combat sports media?
Oh, that's a brilliant question. I think it was probably like I was so fortunate early on that so many, because I was waiting for Liverpool Echo for a decade, meant that I could hit the trail with all these Liverpool boxers.
Yeah.
You know, the Smith family, Bellew, Tony Dodson, Derry Matthews. You know, there's been so many wonderful boxers out of Liverpool over the last 20 years. And I was fortunate enough to be in a position where I would be able to go to any boxing gym in Liverpool, watch people train, watch people spar. And yes, obviously, I built my relationships and contacts books there, and those affinities. But going on the ride with Paul Smith early in his career, with Tony Dodson early in his career, with Tony Bellew when he was just starting out, that meant I was covering like Prince Nazim fights, Joe Calzaghe fights, you know, pretty much all of Ricky Hatton's domestic career. If you look on his undercards, there was always a Scouser involved. I think even the 94th Costa 2, Tony Quigley was on the undercard, which meant that I knew my press pass was guaranteed. Happy days. But so yeah, I've had loads of amazing ones. Listen, I think looking back, one of the most joyous, of course, was going with Bellew, because Bellew went to the same school as me, Chilwell Comprehensive, which, if anyone knows Liverpool, is far from a smart school. It's far from a prestigious school. You know, it's a proper council estate style comprehensive. And up until Bellew, Delia Adebola, the former Crewe striker, I think he was, or Crystal Palace, was probably the most famous sportsman from our school. He was a few years above me. And Bellew was a few years below. But following Bellew from being a fat kid in the novice ABAs, eating Kentucky Fried Chicken the night before he weighed in, and watching him knock everybody out at Everton Park Sports Centre, to then sit ringside when he beat Wakabu at Goodison Park, to sit ringside when he beat David Hay at the O2. That was probably one of the most special journeys, just because I know him personally. I grew up with him very much, and I know his family, I know his background, I know his wife, his children. I still play five-a-side with him now when he lets me, and it's that. So that was an incredibly special journey, and again, for the similar reasons, watching the Smith brothers just get to the levels that they did, unreal. But Derry Matthews is probably one of my most favourites, because he had a massive following in Liverpool, a massive ticket seller. Very similar to Paddy Pimblett, who's just got into the UFC. You know, nobody attracted a crowd like Derry. All kids out on days out, like youth club night out at Derry's fights and everything, mental. And to see Derry go on the journey that he did, you know, almost to a world title, then a succession of losses, knockout defeats. Then the way he came back and reinvented himself and psychologically got over the pain of those losses that I've seen in many, many careers before him. You know, there's a lot of great fighters out there that once they lose a couple of fights, they're never able to get back. Yeah. And I'll never forget the fact that Derry did. Derry Matthews got his legs back under his feet, got his head right again. He came back and had a second spell in his career. For me, that puts him up there as one of the greatest Merseyside boxers of all time. So a lot of my fondest memories are probably with Liverpool boxers, because I grew up with them and they grew up with me. You know, I first started writing about them when they were in the junior and novice ABAs, and I was similar to yourself, Michael. You know, just a young lad, desperate to make a name for myself and desperate to move forward in the sport. And to now get to fight and see Paul Smith doing commentary on one side of the ring, and I'm doing commentary for a radio station, or even Big Pricey doing commentary, and I've got a microphone next to him. I'm like, yeah, man, I've been on this journey with all you guys. It's brilliant. So yeah, I'd put that above interviewing Tyson and interviewing Anderson Silva and being there for super fights like Mayweather Mosley in Vegas. Like, I've done all the good stuff that everybody loves. But like everything in life, maybe it's the little things. It's the fact that I've been in the dressing room with some of these Liverpool lads when they've then achieved their dreams. Maybe that's why that means a little bit more to me.
Yeah, the more human relationship, if you like, rather than just, because I think a lot of people, and obviously I've just recently had Darren Till, which helped my following quite a lot, as I'm sure you're aware. But some people, I think, try and chase the big star a little bit too much, whereas going on them journeys and supporting someone through it, a large part of their career is more magical, more human.
Yeah, of course. You know, as I say, I've interviewed Mike Tyson twice, once over the phone and once in a lift in Manchester. I've interviewed Shane Mosley and Mayweather, and you know, I've hosted dinners and spent the night interviewing the likes of Roberto Duran and my idol Sugar Ray Leonard, and you know, I'm now doing a podcast with Bisping. I spent a lot of time working closely with Dan Hardy, two guys who were just like, you know, absolute legacy assured pioneers of UK MMA. And I've got the pleasure to call as friends now. Dan especially, you know, that guy's mind, the way he looks at fight sports is unreal. He's my mate. It's great. I love all that. But it's the intimate stories really that mean the most. You know, it's because I've seen these guys grow up. I know what they've sacrificed. I know their family backgrounds. Like, funny, I had a text exchange with Big Pricey the other day, and he texted me and he said that his grandmother had passed away, and he was looking through some old newspaper cuttings that she'd kept in a back room. And obviously most of them had my name on them. And he just texted, you know, we had a private conversation in regards to that. And, you know, and for a second there, he was like, you know, didn't quite get to that world title, did I? And I was like, mate, are you messing? The journey we went on with you, Pricey. Like every Liverpool and every British boxing fan that ever went to a David Price fight, you got what you hoped for. Whether he got knocked out or he knocked someone out, he was super entertaining. He won British Commonwealth title. He fought for the European title. You know, he fell short at the final hurdle in terms of Povetkin and facing Anthony Joshua. You know, he would have fought Joshua had he been able to finish Povetkin when he had that opportunity. For Pricey to think for a second that he never delivered, you know, went to the Olympic Games in Beijing, came back with a medal, beat the Olympic champion in the opening rounds. And the reason he did that was because his dad's flight was delayed over, and he didn't want to get knocked out of the Olympics before his dad got there. That was the inspiration for Pricey to beat the current Olympic champion. Amazing. I was part of all that story, you know. I was telling that story to the world, and to look back now, oh man, what a pleasure it's been. And hopefully there's loads more to come, as you say. Till, Pimlet, Molly McCann, got loads in the UFC. And there's a conveyor belt in every gym, not just Liverpool, in every gym in the country. You know, if you're an aspiring fight sports journalist, if every gym in your local area, if every coach and every young fighter doesn't know your name, do you even want to be a journalist? Because that's on your doorstep. You've got to get out there and make contacts there, because that's what I did. Why do you think Bellew would give me an interview before anybody else when he was champion of the world? Because I grew up with him, because I was sat in his living room drinking tea when he had two broken hands and was on the dole. Like, everyone can do that. If you want to do it, get out and do it. And hopefully, like me, as your career takes off, you grab onto the coattails of these future world champions and they take you with them.
Yeah. The only problem with that at the moment, Nick, is obviously COVID, with some of the gyms not allowing people in. But rest assured, that is something that very much weighs on my mind. Can I just ask on a side note, if we think about boxing or combat sports across the UK, is Liverpool the richest in terms of talent?
Yes, absolutely. Funnily enough, I was having a Twitter exchange about this last night in terms of Liverpool. So just look at the UFC right now. I don't know how many Englishmen there is. There must be 15 maybe. 15, 18 Englishmen in the UFC. I think there's 25 Brits, so a couple of Scots, a couple of Welsh. So you're probably looking at high teens English. And 8 of them fight out of Liverpool right now. 8 of them. 5 of them are Scousers after Paddy Pimblett signed. You've got 2 Wolves and that's a term of endearment when you're not a Scouser. In Mike Grundy and Tom Aspinall, who train obviously alongside Till. And then you've also got Mark Jacasey, who's currently training up at John Gillies at Four Corners as well. So in terms of MMA, you know, it always has been really. I think MMA, I think most fans will admit that Team Cowbon's the most successful MMA gym in the UK in terms of producing UFC contenders. And right now it's home to 3 more. But next gen, you know, there's 3 out of next gen right now as well. And funnily enough, you know, Paul Rimmer, who owns Next Gen, Colin Hennon, who runs Cowbon, they used to train, they used to be out of the same gym back in the day as well. I'm going back now 20 years, but 15 years, but they used to work together. So, it's there's no surprise really. But listen, that's what Liverpool is, isn't it? The fighting city. It's, if you can't play football, you better be able to fight. That's Liverpool.
Technically, is Danny Roberts not fighting out of Liverpool at the moment at Aspire?
Oh yeah, listen, I count Danny. Danny's one of the 5.
Yeah.
Danny's one of the 5
mistake.
Scousers. Yeah.
Oh
yeah, Danny's a Scouser now. Yeah. Once you listen, he's got a Scouse baby now. He's lived here over 15 years, so that makes him a Scouser now.
Okay, fair enough. And what I would like to do finally, because I was thinking about this earlier before we went live, it's a great time for me and you to talk because the next main event is headlined and co-headlined by 2 Brits. So let's talk a little bit about the 10th of April, Darren Till versus Marvin Vettori. What are your opinions as a stylistic matchup for this fight?
I think Vettori's very good. I think he's very underrated. I think his ground game's absolutely solid. I think his stand-up's solid as well.
Yeah.
It's a real test for Till, and even though he's Italian, I think he's based with my mate Rafael Cordero over at King's MMA in California. So he's surrounded himself by killers. And he absolutely is the guy that could slide underneath here. And he knows what's at stake. Vettori, look back at the Israel Adesanya career at middleweight. The guy that pushed Adesanya harder than most was Vettori. Adesanya won on a split decision. And then he proved last time out when he stepped in to take on Hermansson when he replaced Till, that he'd done a number on him. So I think Vettori is an incredibly dangerous opponent. If I wasn't a dyed-in-the-wool Scouser, honestly, I'd say this was a 50-50 fight. And there's so much at stake. Yeah. And Darren knows what's at stake as well, because we've just seen Adesanya move to light heavyweight. It didn't work out for him. He realised that Jan Blachowicz wasn't the soft touch he was hoping for. He was just way too big. And he's going to come back down now. He wants to prove a point, but he's made it clear he's got no interest in rematches. Yeah. Because most of the Vettori aside, most of those rematches, Whittaker, Costa, even Gastelum, he's never want to jump back in there again. Most of these leading contenders, he won and won convincingly. Yeah. That's not inspiring Israel Adesanya to get in the gym and put the graft in. Till does. He sees what Till's all about. He's a very, very technical striker, very intelligent. Look at Whittaker, Gastelum, Stephen Thompson, all these guys that have been with Till have said the same thing. Yeah. I've never worked so hard in there. Yeah, my brain was on overload. I couldn't, he doesn't give you a second to stop. What Till does with his positioning, with his feints, with his movement, is on a completely different level to most guys in this middleweight division. But I think what Darren's got to learn and what Darren's got to do is be as aggressive in the octagon as he is outside it. I think if anything, my only criticism of Till would be he's just not active enough. Yeah. Just doesn't throw enough shots. He's just not counter-strike strong enough, and that's his game. And I think he's aware now that he can't just wait for the perfect punch every time. That he needs to get after it. He needs to get aggressive. And he knows if he does a number on Vettori on April the 10th, if he does a number on him and if he gets his arm raised and looks good doing it, Darren Till will get the next shot at the middleweight championship. Whether you like it or not, doesn't really matter. That's not how this game works. This is a numbers business. It's not show friends, it's show business. And Darren Till in the main event against Israel Adesanya makes money for the UFC, makes money for everyone involved. So Till knows what's at stake. I know he's grafting his bollocks off. Usually I get down to Cowbon a couple of times when he's in camp, but obviously because of lockdown, I could go down there, but I just want to stay away. Not, I get tested regularly myself just because of work commitments and stuff, but I just want to stay away. I don't want to be that guy that, opens the door and lets something in. So, and I know how important this opportunity is for Till, because he can ill afford another loss on his record because, what comes after that. But also, victory, he's there, he's got it. Adesanya will happen this year if Till can get the victory. So April the 10th, I absolutely can't wait for it. And it'll be the new event in Venom Fight Gear as well. So for a geek like me, sorry to spoil the facade of me being a casual, I'm super excited to see what the Venom Fight Gear looks like too. Hopefully we get Venom curved finger gloves, that'd be nice.
Yeah, it was, yeah. It feels like to me, and I'd like to get your opinion on this, that this Till Vettori fight, it will swing one way or the other in terms of Vettori will either impose his will on Till and will keep staying his face and will probably as we mentioned, then outwork him a little bit, or Till will be too elusive with his footwork and his feints. Do you see that fight going like that, or do you think it's going to be hotly contested?
Yeah, listen, I can't see Vettori stopping Till.
Yeah.
But I can see Till stopping Vettori, and that just might be me being biased, you know. And I'm listen, I'm not going to apologise for it. I am biased. I like to broadcast bias. I've got my favourites, and I like to support them. And again, that whole backstory, I've known Till for a long time. I've known Colin Heron most of my life. Funnily enough, back in the Merseymark days, he was one of the first ever fight sports coaches I ever interviewed, ever spoken to. He was a Thai coach at the time. And we've had a relationship for 22 years, which is why I have such amazing access to that gym. But so yeah, I believe Till will either finish him in style and look absolutely incredible doing it. And suddenly we get this uber aggressive, like counter strike, you know, first or second round, just a real statement. Or I think it could be an absolute war, and it could go down to the final bell. But obviously, as long as Till gets his hand raised, I kind of don't care either way. But it is a fight. It's a real fight, and it is a bit of a flip a coin if you're the neutral.
Yeah, and let's just very briefly touch on the co-main event, because to me, Arnold Allen is a little bit like the forgotten man of featherweight. He's got so much talent. I think he's undefeated in the UFC, but he hasn't quite made that leap up to the upper echelon of featherweight. What do you think he needs to do against Sadiq to move from maybe a fringe top 15, top 10 contender into a legit title aspirational contender?
The thing with Arnold's in the same category as Leon Edwards. All the talent in the world. Literally one of the best guys in the world in his weight division. Yeah. And I think Yusuf's an incredibly tough fight for him, but Arnold Allen can win that fight and look good winning that fight as well. I think people look at him and look at his boyish good looks and don't think there's much about him. But his dad's a former strongman, or is a strongman, and an ex-fighter himself. Like, he's made the stand of stuff, Arnold Allen. Honestly, if you were to cut him with a blade, I bet he doesn't even bleed. It's just stone underneath that skin. The kid is made of iron. He's got all the talent in the world, but I categorize him like Leon Edwards. There's a piece missing from his all-round superstar game, and that's marketability. Yeah. He doesn't rock the mic. He doesn't sell himself. He isn't great in interviews. He is a quiet guy, quite shy, actually. You know, and when you get to speak, when you speak to Arnold away from the cameras, he's great. He's great value. But he hasn't got that showman about him. And unfortunately, in fight sports, especially fight sports period, but modern-day fight sports especially, you've got to be able to sell yourself. You've got to be able to sell a ticket, sell the brand. You know, so he's going to have to do it the hard way. He's going to have to do it like Leon Edwards. He'll probably have to beat 5 or 6 of the top contenders before he gets to sniff. Yeah. That, unfortunately, that's just kind of the way his road will be. You know, in terms of Paddy Pimblett, he's more of a Darren Till style. You know, Paddy Pimblett can rack up 3 or 4 wins together. When he lets those Liverpool lips go, then he will climb those rankings fast, and he will become a superstar really quickly, because the UFC is in the superstar business, you know. So I think Arnold's he's probably got at least 3 or 4 wins to go, even against top guys. But can he do it? He can absolutely do it. He's got the ability to do it. He's got the ability to go on a massive winning run. Till will never, ever be undefeated in 10 fights straight. It's just not his makeup. It's not the way he fights, not the way he is, not the way he lives his life. He lives his life like this, like a roller coaster. I think Paddy might be a little bit the same. Yeah. He'll win a couple, lose a couple, but it won't matter, because you'll be bought in, because the journey will be so entertaining. Arnold Allen and Leon Edwards, it's all about keeping that undefeated record going to get to the top where you cannot be denied. And at one stage, you won't be denied. And he's, you know, who knows, man? If he gets the right fight at the right time, Arnold Allen could 100% be a UFC champion. Yeah,
he definitely could. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it like that, between the similarity between him and Edwards, but they both have got that quality where they both need to make themselves undeniable, don't they? Because they're not particularly marketable to a certain extent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'll leave you with this final question, Nick. There are four English fighters in the rankings: Till, Aspinall, Arnold Allen and Leon Edwards, and there are 2 Scots, Joanne Calderwood and Paul Craig. Excluding them 6, who else is impressing you in the British scene in the UFC?
Oof. I feel like Darren Stewart's close, but always gets forgotten about. Every time I see Jack Shaw fight, I'm enamored by him as well. That's a kid who's got a huge future. Who else? You know what? If you could climb inside his brain and just change the wires around a little bit, just get him to be a little bit more. But it's like putting blinkers on a horse in the Grand National. If you could somehow put blinkers on him and tunnel vision him just to be a mixed martial artist and just to be focused on fighting for those 15 minutes, Tom Breese has got all the physical attributes to be champion of the world. I truly believe that. But unfortunately, Tom, I think, is his own worst enemy. The man in the middle with Tom is his own worst enemy. And it's such a shame because when you watch him fight, you think, Christ, when you watch him train, when you watch him on the mats, he's next level. He is next level. He reminds me in a lot of ways of Terry Etten when Terry first got into the UFC and you had Joe Rogan saying he's the British Anderson Silva and all this. That wasn't Joe doing his usual blowing smoke. Like Terry Etten had all the talent in the world, but he was similar to Leon Edwards. Terry couldn't rock the microphone. Terry's one of the funniest guys to be around when you're in the gym, when you're just hanging out with him, having dinner, having drinks or whatever. I've been lucky enough to be out on meals with Terry and nights out with Terry. And he's absolutely value for money. He's brilliant. But put a microphone and a camera in his face, even me, and I've known him 2 decades, and he just wasn't comfortable at all, similar to Leon. And I think that was the inhibitor that stopped Terry Etten achieving what he could have achieved in the sport. And I think very similarly, what's going on in Tom Breese's head is stopping him achieve what he could achieve in the sport. So I always look at Tom and think, one day he's going to be an amazing coach, Tom Breese, and I think he might even coach a UFC champion. But at the back of my mind, I'll always think, oh man, if you were a little bit more able to just block out the rest of the world and focus, he could have been a UFC champion as well.
Yeah. I think he's only actually lost to top guys, though, hasn't he? He's lost to Akhmedov most recently, and I can't remember the others off the top of my head. But you are right. He's just that step away from that real breakout win, isn't he?
He's had a couple of situations in the UK which have been widely publicised, but a couple of situations when he had fights at UFC London where he fled the hotel, but he left before or after the weigh-ins, and his mind wasn't right, so he pulled himself out of fights. And I think anybody else would just be cut by the UFC, but the fact that they kept and they've still got Tom Breese on the roster speaks volumes about the talent that he's got. He just needs to be able to, as you say, put them blinkers on. But there's so many, and the exciting thing right now is, we've never had as many fighters in the UFC from the UK as we've got right now. Paul Craig, I was lucky enough to spend some time with him recently. If you don't think Paul Craig can fight for the UFC belt, you're mental. Because yes, he's got some holes, in a stand-up game, but it doesn't matter. He's learning to compete with the very best guys. He's ranked for a reason. And he competes at the very top for a reason. He deserves to be there. And just spending some time with him recently, I thought, man, you're a switched on guy, man. Paul Craig is absolutely switched on. And I think out of all them you listed, the 6, Jojo could weirdly be the first one to get a shot at the title if she comes through this final eliminator. Paul Craig could be the absolute dark horse in that field to get a shot, because that light heavyweight division, certainly now after Izzy's been sent back, and I feel like the cat is amongst the pigeons there now. I don't think, as great as Jan looked, I don't think Jan Blachowicz is going to be champion for as long a run as John Jones. I certainly don't think Glover Teixeira is going to do it, and I don't think anyone, when you look down that list, is going to run away with that belt for the next decade. So Paul Craig, if he can get 2 or 3 more wins, he could get a shot early next year. And my goodness, Scotland's first UFC champion. Wow, stranger things have happened.
Phil keeps talking about bringing the UFC to Anfield. Could you imagine Paul Craig and Jojo bringing the UFC to Scotland? That would be next level.
Yeah, Hampton Park or something like that. Oh my God, be absolutely mental. We went up to Scotland, UFC Glasgow, a couple of years ago. The night when Danny Roberts had that incredible knockout where he spanned the guy 360 degrees. I'll never forget it. But the fans then, the Scottish fans, were some of the maddest, most OTT MMA fans I've ever met. They absolutely loved it. And if Paul Craig was to fight Jan or Glover or anyone challenge for that UFC gold at Hampden Park, oh my word, that'd be something a bit special, let me tell you. Full bagpipes and all that. Oh, come on, bring out the beard, you. Mega.
I think that's a good place for us to end on Dan Until headliner at Anfield and Paul Craig headliner at Hampden Park. What do you think?
Sign me up, absolutely.
Well, I very much enjoyed you imparting some of your knowledge and having just a general fight talk with you today, Nick. It was very, very much appreciated.
Cheers, Michael. Keep grinding, mate. Make your dream come true. That's what it's all about. You're doing everything you need to do to make this your career. You're doing right now. So just keep grinding, keep putting your content out there, mate. And you never know who's watching.
Well, that was evidenced by yourself, to be honest. When I remember being sat on the couch and it came up, Nick Peet has followed you. I remember going. I honestly can remember kind of being a little bit shocked to see that my work was starting to get recognition. So that's very much appreciated.
Mate, you know what they say? Keep your friends close and keep your enemies close. And a good-looking lad like you after my job. That's what it is. If you see what a younger, better-looking Scouse model, and there you go. I'm looking like that, so that's why I'm keeping my eye on you.
Did you see? I don't know if you saw this, and I'm not blowing my own trumpet, but did you see the night I put Darren Till up? I was walking down the road. I went for a walk around Aintree Racecourse, and it just came up. Ariel Helwani has looked at your story, and I was a little bit taken aback. And then he just put a story up, and I clicked on it, and it was my work. It was really.
I hope he credited you for it. You know what Ariel's like.
Well, I did wonder if there was something sinister, to be honest, but it was a bit strange in the same night to be on Darren Till's and Ariel Helwani's Instagram story. Right. But we'll get it.
There you go.
Before we finish, Nick, how can people find you on social media and some of the projects you're involved with?
On social media, I'm at PT_editor. But more than anything, follow Fight Disciples, fightdisciples.com, all our back catalogues there. You can find us on iTunes, in your podcast app, just search for Fight Disciples. We're the biggest fight sports podcast in the UK with the biggest numbers. Find out what everyone's talking about, why we win so many awards and why we sell so much beer. It's because, we talk shite about fights on a regular basis.
Well, is there anything better in the world than talking shite about fights?
Exactly. With beers, usually, as well.
Do you know what?
Hopefully soon, me and Adam are going to get in this garden and get back together for the first time since our away trips to Fight Island. We do some podcast nose to nose. That'd be nice.
You know what, though? I must admit, especially this 10th of April card coming up, I don't drink when there's a big UFC. I'm too. I've got to be switched on, otherwise I'll just be I'll be looking up and I won't be focused. So beer and fight doesn't really.
This one's prime time UK, you see. So it's the main event. They're going to ring walk Victoria until about 9-10 p.m. UK time. So you haven't got to stay up for anything. So you can have a beer with that. No problem. I only struggle once the Jack Daniels comes out and it's about 2 o'clock in the morning. That's when I'm pouring that Jack Daniels, I'm like, I'm not making this main event now. That's like the end of it. I'll fall asleep in any minute, and that's always a signal. So I'm quite happy that Till and Victoria is going to be on prime time. It means I can start drinking early in the afternoon.
Yeah. I'm more of a get up for the main card type and watch the prelims tomorrow morning type myself. Get up about 3:30 and go back to bed about 7 in the morning. That's more.
There you go. Right. There's a man with experience right there.
Well, I think that's a good place for us to end. So thank you very much for your time today, Nick.
Cheers, Michael. All the best.